I think we can all agree that it's definitely not this. This is an improvement. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Sorry. Now we're starting to get somewhere. With the exception of my very first video, I've shot every video uploaded on this channel with an iPhone. As a recent theater school graduate working as a nanny in New York, I can't afford a big fancy camera, so the phone camera it is. My videos up to this point have looked okay, but I want more. I want to get the best possible video that I can out of this phone. Right off the bat, I shoot on my iPhone 15 Pro, so your mileage may vary depending on your iPhone model. Some of what I test and demonstrate will be specific to iPhone 15 Pro and beyond, but a good chunk of it will be applicable to earlier iPhone models as well. First, let's talk resolution. I shoot in 4K, which is 3840 pixels by 2160 pixels. I then edit that 4K footage in a 1080p workflow, that being a 1920 pixel by 1080 pixel frame. I do this for two reasons. Firstly, most people watch videos on their phone these days, and your eyes can't tell the difference between a 4K video and a 1080p video on something as small as a phone screen. And even if you are watching on desktop, odds are that you don't have a 4K monitor or internet that is reliable enough to stream in 4K by default. It's probably a setting you have to change manually. Even my MacBook Pro hooked up to near gigabit internet does not default to 4K video. I have to toggle that setting myself. Simply put, 4K is a lot of extra time and hard drive space for a difference that very few will notice. The second reason that I edit my 4K footage in 1080 is that when I'm editing, it gives me the flexibility to zoom in without losing pixels. 4K is much larger than 1080, so I can zoom in on myself in post without sacrificing image quality to a certain extent. Moving back to the iPhone's camera, the default isn't half bad. Bear in mind as I go, by the way, that I'm shooting in front of my window, so the lighting environment will change, but at this moment there's no color correction on the image. This is my phone shooting at 4K 30 with automatic settings. I haven't altered the white balance, which changes the color temperature of the image, and I haven't altered the automatic exposure, which controls how much light hits the phone's camera sensor. In my opinion though, the iPhone overexposes a bit by default. It makes the image too bright, but you can change this in the iPhone's camera settings. If you click this little arrow here, it brings up an exposure scroller, which you can use to manually dial the exposure up and down. This is my iPhone still shooting at 4K 30 in the native camera app, but I've lowered the exposure a full stop down to -1. Already an improvement in my opinion, but we can go further if we dive into third-party camera apps. The world of third-party phone cameras is complex, so I'm only going to talk about two today, the Final Cut Camera app and the Moment Pro camera app. Final Cut Camera is free, and Moment Pro costs what I think is a very reasonable $9. I don't personally use Final Cut Camera, so I won't dwell on it too long. It's the default camera app with a lot of extra control, manual white balance, exposure, and you can easily switch between resolutions, frame rates, and codecs without leaving the app. If you want a more thorough Final Cut camera breakdown, I'll refer you to Tyler Stallman's review, which I've linked in the description. Moving on to the Moment Pro camera app. If you want control, this thing has everything. Volume monitor, color graphs, easy switch shooting modes, and control over shutter speed, ISO, exposure value, focus, and white balance. It's amazing. Since the Moment Pro has so much control, there are a couple ways that you can go about it. I'm currently shooting with a shutter speed of 1/60 and my ISO turned all the way down to the bottom, and I'm letting the camera white balance automatically. If I was using studio lights instead of natural light, I would just set the camera's white balance to be the same color temperature as my lights. The other way that you can use Moment Pro, and the way that I personally use it, is to let the app dictate the shutter speed and the exposure automatically, and then just drop the exposure value by a full stop or however much you want to get the look you want. I'm shooting with automatic white balance, automatic shutter speed, and automatic ISO, and then I'm just taking the exposure value down to -1. Again, if I had studio lights set up in a much more controlled environment where the lighting wasn't changed, I would dial in more manual settings, but automatic works for now. No matter what, the best thing to do is experiment. Sit down in your space, film a bunch of stuff, goof around with the settings, and just find what you like. Can we take this further though? Thus far, everything I've said applies to a wide swath of iPhone models, but if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or better, there's even more we can dive into. iPhone 15 Pro is actually capable of shooting in log, or logarithmic gamma curve. I'm not going to pretend to know all the ins and outs, but log records a very flat image that retains a lot of color detail, and this gives you tons of flexibility when you're editing and color correcting. Now, do I know how to color grade log footage? Absolutely not, but the aforementioned Tyler Stallman has a custom LUT for sale on his store that only costs $15 and it does most of the work for you. He has a really detailed breakdown on how to edit log footage that I'll link in the description. And these are the results. Shooting at 4K 30 Apple log with a shutter speed of 1/60 and ISO all the way down to 55. And I am just blown away by the amount of flexibility that shooting in log gets you, and it really was not that hard. I literally learned how to do this today. I've always been curious about shooting log, but it sounded really intimidating, and I really appreciate the way that Tyler Stallman broke it down, and his LUT makes everything super plug and play. So shout out to Tyler Stallman for making life easier and making YouTube videos look better. I'm just gonna sit here and let editing Ethan mess around with this in post. Look at how much you can do with the color. Now there is one more step we can take, but it's a step that's gonna be impractical for 99.9% of people, and that's shooting in ProRes. ProRes is an incredibly high quality, visually lossless format, but the file sizes are so big that almost nobody can use it. For context, a minute of normal 4K 30 is 170 megabytes, whereas with ProRes, a minute of 4K 30 is 6 gigabytes. So a ProRes file is literally 35 times larger than Apple's default Rec 709. So here's a few very brief seconds of me shooting in 4K 30 ProRes log. I actually did go over and give that file a look. It was 22 seconds long and 636 megabytes. I checked on Moments settings, and there are actually 4 different types of ProRes that you can choose between when you're using the Moment app. I couldn't find those controls in the Final Cut Camera app, and I don't think they exist in the default camera app either. So that 6 gigabytes a minute might be default with Apple, but with the Moment app, as far as I can tell, you can change it, and it defaults to ProRes Lite, which is a smaller, more manageable file size. So that's the journey as I understand it currently, from blown out 720p 30 to manually dialed in 4K 30 shot in ProRes log. Is that the most cinematic that an iPhone can get? With my equipment, I would say probably yes. Obviously, shooting in ProRes isn't a viable regular option for me, but now that Tyler Stallman has demystified shooting in log, I think I might have to add that to my workflow going forward. But thank you so much for going on this little video quality journey with me. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm far from an expert, so I probably glazed over a lot, oversimplified too much, and missed a lot of things that I could have gotten. So feel free to call me out on that in the comments. For my regular viewers, here are today's photos from my photo walk. And if you're curious, Sweet Lou still doesn't want to talk to you. They see me rolling. And I'll leave you with a slideshow of disposable camera pictures that Emma and I took at the beach. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.